The man who stopped pretending. There's a moment that comes to some men, usually quietly, usually without warning. It's not dramatic. There's no lightning bolt, no revelation that knocks them off their feet. It's simpler than that. One day, he's sitting in a room full of people, listening to conversations he's heard 1,000 times before, and something inside him just stops responding. The laughter sounds hollow. The stories feel rehearsed. Everyone's performing, and suddenly he can see it. All of it. The masks, the scripts, the desperate need to be liked. And once he sees it, he can't unsee it. This is where our story begins. With a man who woke up. He doesn't announce it. He doesn't post about it on social media or tell his friends he's having some kind of spiritual awakening. He simply starts pulling back. Not out of anger or judgment, but because something fundamental has shifted inside him. The things that used to matter, the status games, the gossip, the constant need for validation, they don't grip him anymore. At first, people don't notice. He still shows up to gatherings. He still smiles and nods. But if you watch closely, you'll see the difference. He's present, but he's no longer participating in the performance. He's no longer trying to win anyone over, no longer shaping his words to get approval. He's just there, honest and unguarded. And that small shift changes everything. His friends start to feel it before they understand it. Conversations that used to flow easily now hit strange pauses. He's not filling the silence with small talk anymore. He's not laughing at jokes that aren't funny. He's not agreeing just to keep the peace. And people notice. They might not say anything, but they feel the absence of something they'd grown used to, his need for them. Because here's the truth about most human connection. It's built on an unspoken agreement. You validate my choices, I'll validate yours. You make me feel good about myself, I'll return the favor. We'll avoid the hard questions. We'll keep things comfortable. It's a trade, and it works as long as everyone keeps trading. But he stopped trading. And when one person stops, the whole system feels it. Some people admire him for it. They see something solid in him now, something grounded. Others find it unsettling. They ask if he's okay. They say he's changed. They wonder if he's depressed or angry or going through something. What they really mean is, he's no longer easy to control. He's no longer reflecting back what they want to see. He's become unpredictable, and that makes them uncomfortable. The interesting thing is, he's not trying to make anyone uncomfortable. He's not rebelling or making some grand statement. He's simply done pretending. And the space that creates that quiet distance between who he was and who he's becoming, that's where the real transformation happens. He starts spending more time alone. Not because he hates people, but because most interactions now feel exhausting. There's so much energy in maintaining appearances, in performing emotions you don't feel, in giving reassurance when you don't believe what you're saying. He used to do all of that without thinking. Now he can't. It feels dishonest, and dishonesty feels like violence against himself. So he chooses solitude. And this is where most people misunderstand him. They see a man alone and assume he's lonely. They see someone who stopped chasing what everyone else is chasing and think he's given up. But they're wrong. He hasn't given up. He's found something most people spend their whole lives searching for: peace with himself. In the quiet, away from the noise and expectation, he discovers who he actually is. Not the version he performs for others. Not the one who says yes when he means no. Not the one who shrinks himself to make others comfortable. Just him. Raw and real. And for the first time in years, maybe ever, that's enough. This kind of solitude isn't empty. It's full. Full of clarity, of truth, of a strange kind of freedom that comes from no longer needing external validation. He sits with himself in the silence most people run from. And what he finds there isn't darkness. It's peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need to be shared or explained or justified. Of course, this only deepens the distance between him and the world. His old friendships start to fade, not because of fights or betrayals, but because the foundation they were built on no longer exists. He realizes now that many of those relationships were held together by shared complaints, by routine habits, by the mutual reinforcement of comfortable lies. Once he stopped participating in that, the connections weakened on their own. He doesn't blame anyone. He understands why people cling to what feels familiar. Life is uncertain and scary, and shared illusions make it feel less so. But he can't participate anymore. He won't pretend to care about things that don't matter. He won't engage in conversations designed to avoid real connection. He won't trade depth for comfort. And so, most people drift away. They don't understand him anymore. They say he's become too serious, too quiet, too different. What they mean is, he's no longer playing the game. And if you're not playing, you're not part of the team. But here's what they don't see. In losing those surface connections, he's made room for something deeper. True friendship. Not the kind based on convenience or habit, but the kind built on mutual recognition. Two people who don't need each other but choose to walk side by side anyway. No expectations, no performance, just presence. These connections are rare. Most people go their whole lives without experiencing one. But for him, one real connection is worth more than 100 shallow ones. Because real connection doesn't ask him to be smaller. It doesn't demand he hide his truth. It simply sees him and says, I see you too. The paradox is this. The more awake he becomes, the quieter his life gets. The clearer he sees, the fewer people remain. Not because he's pushing them away, but because clarity is disruptive. It exposes all the little lies people tell themselves to feel safe. And most people aren't ready to face that. So they stay at a distance. They call him distant. They say he's changed. And they're right. He has changed. He stopped seeking approval. He stopped needing to be understood. He stopped measuring his worth by how much space he takes up in other people's lives. From the outside, it might look like he's lost something. But inside, he knows the truth. He's gained everything. He's found himself. And that self doesn't need the world to wake up for him to feel whole. It doesn't need agreement to feel clear. It doesn't need validation to know who he is. There are moments late at night when he feels it. The longing. Not for crowds or parties or endless conversation, but for someone awake. Someone who has walked the same path, who has seen through the same illusions, who doesn't need him to perform or pretend, or be anything other than what he is. That kind of meeting is rare. You can't force it. You can't plan it. It happens when it happens, or it doesn't. And he's learned to be okay with that. He would rather walk alone in truth than surrounded by people living in comfortable lies. This is the final evolution. He no longer interprets distance as something wrong. He sees it for what it is, the natural result of authenticity in a world that prefers performance. While others surround themselves with noise to avoid their own thoughts, he's learned to sit in stillness. While many chase attention to feel seen, he moves through the world without needing to be noticed. People often ask him if he's lonely, if he wishes things were different, if he regrets the path he's chosen. And the answer is always the same. No. Because loneliness isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of connection with yourself. And he's never been more connected. He walks alone now, but not as an outsider. Not as someone lost or broken or running away. He walks alone as a man at peace. A man who knows the cost of truth and has decided it's worth paying. A man who stopped pretending and discovered that what's real is always better than what's comfortable. In a world still dreaming, he's awake, and that makes all the difference. Some will never understand him. They'll see his solitude and call it sadness. They'll see his honesty and call it arrogance. They'll see his peace and mistake it for emptiness. But he's learned not to correct them, because explaining would require them to see what he sees, and most people aren't ready for that. So he lets them think what they think. He lets them interpret his silence however they need to, because he's no longer living for their understanding. He's living for his own truth. And in that truth, in that quiet, honest space where performance ends and presence begins, he's found something most people spend their entire lives searching for: freedom. Not the kind of freedom that comes from having no responsibilities or escaping to some distant place, but the kind that comes from no longer being a prisoner to what others think. The kind that says, I am who I am, and that's enough. This is his story. The man who stopped pretending. The man who chose truth over comfort, clarity over connection, and solitude over performance. He didn't choose an easy path, but he chose his path. And in the end, that's all that matters. He walks alone, but he walks free. And in a world full of people still trapped in performance, still seeking validation, still afraid of their own silence, that freedom is the rarest gift of all. The crowd will keep moving. They'll keep playing their games, wearing their masks, trading validation like currency. And he'll watch from a distance, not with judgment, but with understanding. Because he was once there too. He knows what it's like to need approval, to fear solitude, to mistake noise for connection. But he's on the other side now. And from here, everything looks different, clearer, simpler, more real. And if you're reading this, if these words resonate somewhere deep inside you, maybe you're starting to wake up too. Maybe you're beginning to see the performance for what it is. Maybe you're feeling that pull toward solitude, that need for something more real than what the world is offering. If that's you, know this: the path gets quieter, but it doesn't get emptier. You lose the crowd, but you find yourself. And that trade, difficult as it is worth making. Because a life lived in truth, even if it's lived alone, will always be richer than a life lived in performance, no matter how crowded it gets. So walk your path, trust your awakening. And remember, being alone in truth is never the same as being lonely in a crowd. One is freedom. The other is just a different kind of prison. The choice, as always, is yours.